Hello, everyone, and welcome to our fifth and final webinar in the orientation series. This is Start Strong, Resources to Help You Thrive at CUNY SPS. I'm very happy to have you here with us. I am Angela Francis, Assistant Dean of General Education and First Year Experience. I'm joined here by the wonderful Emily Jennings, who is part of the first year team, as well as the fantastic events team, Heather Zeman and Molly Joyce. And extra thanks go to Samantha, who is here to provide captions. So we are very glad that you are here with us. We have a lot to cover. So before we get started, I just want to let you know you should not be worried about taking notes on anything on these slides. There's a lot of them. We're going to give them to you as a PDF. So I don't want you to feel like you need to try to keep up. As with our previous webinars, if you have any questions for me as we go through this, please make sure you ask them in the QA panel. Meanwhile, if you're having technical issues, so you can't hear me, you can't see my screen, I sound like I'm talking about something on a browser window, but you're still seeing a PowerPoint, anything like that, please pop that in the chat. So remember, questions for me about content, put those in the QA. Technical issues or just to chat amongst yourselves during this, please put those in the chat. And so before we get started, we actually want to have a Zoom poll for you. Essentially, we want to know what types of events or activities you'd be most excited to participate in during the semester. And if there's something you'd be interested in that you don't see listed, definitely feel free to add those ideas in the Zoom chat too. We are looking at these to help finalize our programming and what we offer in terms of resources during your first term. So your feedback here is crucial. We'll let the poll go on for about 20 more seconds. All right, last 5. Okay, let's see what you guys had to say. So hopefully you can see these results now on your screen, but just in case not, we have a really close, almost tie here. Pulling in front is academic skill webinars. So we will definitely be providing some assistance with those. But I'm noticing that next up is student clubs and conferences, and then everything else has about a third of you in terms of peer mentorship opportunities, virtual or in-person hangouts, new student success events, and thought leader or guest speaker discussions. So before we move on, I just want to make sure you all saw the announcement from over the holiday weekend in orientation, because if you are interested in peer mentorship opportunities, we posted about one in the announcements. The deadline to apply will be on Thursday, and it would be an opportunity if you are accepted to receive not one, but 2 mentors, a peer mentor and an alumni mentor. So if that is something you are interested in, please do make sure you give that resource a look, and we will make sure that we keep the rest of this in mind throughout the rest of your first term. So thank you for sharing your thoughts. So let's move on here. Essentially, I'm going to be showing you or telling you about resources across the school, broken down into categories. And so if at any point, again, you have any questions, please do ask them in the QA. I will be checking those periodically just to make sure I'm not leaving anyone's question behind. So first off, I want to make sure I tell you all about e-portfolios. E-portfolios here are generally hosted on a platform called Digication. You will receive your login early in the term, but these are spaces where you can essentially create a website using a drag and drop interface. So you can make a personal website. You can make essentially an online resume or CV. Some programs, such as nursing or liberal studies, will have you create a e-portfolio as part of your degree process. But this is a tool that will be open to all of you, and I highly suggest thinking about if it can be useful to you either along your academic journey or as you think about whatever might come next, because as you know, sometimes you can add a website to your resume, and this would count. You can have it be set so that it is visible to people outside of the school. So, things you can think about here. Who are you as a student? How do your classes connect to one another? What skills do you take with you from one semester to the next? And these are all things that if you are doing a program portfolio where it is required by your degree major, that you will definitely need to think about. But beyond that, remember that this is a space where you can showcase who you are, not just as a student, but as a person. So you can be creative with this space. And there is indeed a resource that you can see more information about tutorials of how to use ePortfolio, as well as previous award winners, because we have spotlights most years, and you can enter your ePortfolio for a potential prize. If you have any questions about ePortfolios, there is a team dedicated to it, and you can see their email here on the left. It is eportfolios@sps.cuny.edu, and they can answer any questions. You can also schedule an appointment with them to work through any technical support issues, and they have asynchronous workshops to help you navigate through ePortfolio more easily. So if you give it a look, think it looks interesting, but realize you might need more help, well, there is support here for that. Let's move on to benefits. So one is the American Management Association. This association is outside of SPS, outside of CUNY, but it is a world leader in terms of advancing skills that might help you in business employment success. They offer over 160 online courses, and you have free membership as a student here. So for more information, you'll want to go to www.amanet.org because I would definitely advise signing up, seeing if any of these courses align with your goals and plans for the future. Likewise, there is a Student Association Professional Development Grant that is within SPS, and it can provide financial support to help you engage in professional development or career advancement. And so really what you would need to be able to do is link this opportunity to your goals, and definitely suggest looking information up at the URL on the bottom of the screen, and then reaching out to student services for more information before you submit an application, just to make sure that your application is targeted. We also want to highlight some free and discounted rates at items in New York City. So if you are a local student, remember that you can use the CUNY Arts Initiative to experience more cultural institutions at New York City that might not have been open to you otherwise. This is a long-standing program. In fact, a variation of it was in place when I was an undergraduate at CUNY an undisclosed number of years ago. And I was very glad that I used it not just to go to the museums for free, but actually to view several performances at Lincoln Center that I would not have been able to afford otherwise. So I highly suggest looking into this because New York City has a wealth of cultural things to see and do and participate in, but sometimes the price of those can be prohibitive to CUNY students. I know it was to me at the time. So course planning. Want to highlight information about DegreeWorks. If you haven't used DegreeWorks yet, this is a nice, easy way for you to see progress toward your degree requirements. So for example, if you still have some gen eds to do or some programs in your major, this is an easy way to see that. It also will show you essentially a pie chart of how many credits you are toward the 120 required for your degree, in addition to how far you are toward meeting your requirements for those degrees. Because since some of our students are coming in bringing a lot of transfer credits in, sometimes you will be closer to 120 credits than you necessarily are to completing those degree requirements. And knowing that up front can help you decide how you want to move forward. Particularly now, it is possible that certain degrees may accept more of your transfer credits than others, just because they might slot in more easily toward the requirements of your major. So if you log in and you see a vast difference in terms of credits to degree, that's that 120 rather, and requirements fulfilled, that could be a reason to start thinking about a conversation with your advisor if you are not feeling particularly tied to your degree pathway. And I am looking because I see two questions here. Um, so the two questions so far, the first one, ePortfolio, does it carry credits? Is it compulsory to graduate? So if you are in a program that requires an ePortfolio, that is indeed required. For most programs, they are not required, in which case you do not need to do them. ePortfolios do not carry credits in and of themselves. They are meant to reflect the work you're doing in your credit-bearing courses. And then there's another question about being in a mentorship program, but not having an alumni mentor. It really depends on which mentorship program you're in. So there is the dual mentorship program, which is the one that I mentioned is highlighted in the announcement. That is the one that will get you an alumni mentor. You might currently be enrolled in a different program, in which case you can send us an email at the orientation@sps.cuny.edu email address, and we can look into this for you. Thank you for those questions. All right, next up, Navigate. So EAB Navigate has a free mobile app. You can use this to schedule appointments with, for example, your advisor, members of the financial aid or bursar teams. You can engage with the SPS community in terms of taking polls, receiving tips, getting reminders. But something that we are turning on this semester for the first time is called the hand raise feature. And so the first area to do that will be financial aid. And so you will be able to log in to Navigate, raise your hand to signify to that office that you need some additional support. And they will not only work to almost immediately send you baseline information, but that office will then reach out to you as well. So all of that plus more reasons to sign up for and sign into EAB Navigate. You will also receive messaging from it during the term. So for example, during midterms, your professors will fill out a progress report about how you're doing so far in the semester, and you'll get an email from the system letting you know what your grade is as of midterms and any advice that your professors have for you as you continue along throughout the semester. So this is a really useful tool that is only going to become more useful as time goes on, and I highly suggest taking advantage of it. I also want to mention credit for prior learning. So if you were with us during the first webinar, the welcome webinar, you heard about this. Likewise, you may have heard a bit about this if you joined the credit for prior learning webinar. But I checked with the director, Holly Broadfoot, earlier today, and can also now share information about an additional free resource with you. We have licenses to Coursera's Grow with Google certificates. Usually those cost about $50 a month. But we have a limited amount that we can provide to CUNY SPS students for free. What these allow you to do is take courses in things like project management or UI design that are then recognized well enough that you can include them as credentials on your resume. So we have a limited number of them, um, but if you are interested in them, I ask that you reach out to the Credit for Prior Learning team, and I'm going to put that email in the chat, but it is pla@sps.cuny.edu. So if you are interested in signing up for or learning more about the Grow with Google opportunity, please do reach out to them. Other things, just as a brief reminder that you can potentially earn credit for, includes transfer credit. So all of you have received transfer credit evaluations. You can receive credit by portfolio evaluation using PLA 300, where you sign up for that course that counts as your college option course, and then you are able to submit a portfolio to earn credit for an additional course, which essentially means you are getting credit for 2 courses, assuming your portfolio passes, for the price of 1, which is lovely. You can also take examinations such as Sailor, which is who offers the college success test that you can take after finishing orientation, but also other entities. So if you are someone who knows more than one language, you can, for example, take a language exam and knock those gen ed requirements out the way. And you can also earn credit for certificates that you have earned over the course of your professional career if they've already been evaluated. So if you aren't sure about that, again, please reach out to the PLA team so that you can earn those or you can learn more about those opportunities. I see there are more questions. So before I move on to research, let me pause. So completing orientation itself does not give you college credit, but if you pay the $5, you will earn 1 college credit. So that is the easiest way we can make sure that you earn credit, not just in terms of having help and having it on your record that you completed orientation, but actually a college credit that contributes to your progress toward the degree. So it would be 1 college credit, and you would take the exam for $5. I see a question about how many times you can take that test. I'm not clear on which test you mean. So if you mean the Sailor exam for college credit after finishing orientation, um, you can take that test multiple times, but you can only take it, I believe it's once every 15 days, something along those lines. So if you try taking it and you don't earn the required score, you just have to wait a couple of weeks, pay the $5 again, and you can take it a second time. But once you finish orientation, you'll have actually finished reading more than a third of the materials. Honestly, probably more like half. And you'll be able to skim the resources associated with Sailor and then take that exam and probably do quite well. So if that's not the test you meant, please just clarify in the QA and I'll return to answer your question again. All right, so talking about research, I want to spotlight library services. Our library at SPS is actually the Newman Library at Baruch College. Remember that you need a CUNY SPS student ID card with the barcode and your picture in order to access any CUNY library. I highlight any CUNY library because while Baruch is our home library, once you have that ID card, you can access any CUNY library at all. So if you are up in the Bronx and you are closer to Lehman, you can use, it's called clicks or interlibrary loan. Those are essentially two different ways that libraries send books to one another. So you'd be able to ask the library either within CUNY or another university library to send a book to the CUNY campus closest to you and go pick it up. And that's just much easier. Um, we have a dedicated librarian, Joseph Hartnett, who can answer lots of questions for you. And you can also access electronic research databases, which is how a lot of students do much of the research for their courses. That's how you can access different types of scholarly research or peer-reviewed research using either OneSearch or specific databases like JSTOR. For this, you will use your CUNY SPS username and password, and more about that in a little bit. But again, there is the for further information URL on the bottom of the screen. And then hopefully it's not a surprise to you. I'm a giant fan of Zotero. Zotero is a free tool that you can use to organize your resources. And so as you are reading things and hopefully annotating things throughout the course of your undergraduate career, I highly suggest adding them to Zotero, giving this a try, because what it allows you to do is add tags or collections. So let's say that you are about 2 years away from capstone project. Once you're in your capstone, it's a pretty tall task, tall order to remember what you read in which course and what you thought about it and what connections you saw. But a tool like this will allow you to tag things. So if I were still an undergraduate, my undergraduate thesis was on trauma, and I'd be able to have a tag or a collection on trauma, and then tags such as intergenerational. And so when I was writing a part of my thesis on intergenerational trauma, I'd be able to go to Zotero and see all of the things I'd already read with my notes about them on that topic. And I would also be able to use it to help me do my citations, since that was always something I struggled with, particularly in undergraduate. So it is a free tool. You can access it at zotero.org. And Joseph at the library periodically does indeed do webinars and trainings on how to use this resource. You also have free access to both the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, as long as you are a student here. These are online subscriptions, so you won't receive the paper in the mail. But for the New York Times, last I checked, this includes not just baseline reading the newspapers, but also things like recipes, and for when you need a moment to just kind of give your brain a break, games. So it's the full subscription, and you can just sign up for that. You'll have to renew it once a year, but as long as you are a student here, you'll be able to do so. They are for free. And that's another thing that can help you when you're doing your research in your courses, because the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal are both considered reputable, although not academic sources. All right, pausing again before I move to the next part, because I see we have some more questions. So we have one question about not being able to see all classes in Brightspace. And Emily, I see you're typing an answer. Thank you. But I'm sure other people have this question. You will not see your courses until this coming Saturday, the 25th, which is the first day of the term. The courses should become available to you by 9 a.m. So if you log in on Saturday, let's say at 9:30, and you do not see your courses, as a first term student, you'll be able to email us. I will be staffing and checking the orientation email several times that day, looking just for this. So make sure if you run into this problem, which I do not anticipate, when you email me, please provide your EMPL ID, that's that 8-digit number, and I will be able to look into what's going on. Next question, do you have a digital school ID? While you can receive a digital ID by emailing public safety, just be aware that that digital ID does not give you access to a lot of the resources I was just mentioning. So for example, that digital ID will not give you access to school libraries. What you will be able to do without a physical ID is access the online databases and do all of that sort of research. Someone asked if Zotero is open source software. If you mean in terms of the coding being shared, I don't recall. What I do remember is that it is free to use. So there is no cost to you whatsoever to use Zotero. I would have to check. So if you meant like, is the coding on the back end available? I would have to look at that for you and verify. And someone asked if today is the last meeting. Today is the last orientation webinar. That does not mean it is the end of orientation because remember that's online, an online site. And we will also be offering different opportunities and events during the course of the semester. So this is not your last time with me. All right, more information. So I want to provide some info on emergency grants. There are multiple types that might be useful to you in terms of receiving short-term assistance. There's just the emergency grant. So this is when you are finding yourself unexpectedly in a financial situation of difficulty. You are able to apply for funding that can help you through that moment. There's also the textbook grant, because while a lot of gen eds, I believe it's about 97% of course sections this term are zero textbook cost, there are some courses, particularly in the major, where those textbooks are necessary. We recognize they are pricey. So if you are in a position where you simply cannot afford the textbooks you need, that grant is a potential resource. And lastly, we know that sometimes, unfortunately, our students can be facing situations of food insecurity. So if you find yourself in that situation, we do have a food access initiative where we provide you with essentially a gift card to an online grocery store. It is our equivalent to having a food pantry on campus because we recognize you often are not on campus. And so our food access initiative should not be location specific. So for more information about all of this, again, that URL is on the bottom of the screen. Remember, you will receive all of these slides and some that we are skipping for the sake of time. We also have a technology loan program. So if you find yourself in a situation where you had a computer and the computer has died, we have the opportunity to potentially provide you with a Chromebook or a laptop to use for up to 30 days while you obtain a replacement. The loaner computer is shipped to you at no cost to you, but you do need to provide the laptop loan liability agreement form and provide a brief description of your emergency. It is very important that I note, however, that these are short-term loans. So this is not for a situation where you have a computer that dies and you need it for the rest of your time here or the rest of the term. These truly are for 30 days while you navigate the process of getting yourself access to a more permanent solution. So I wanted to make sure that was clear. All right, we have some more questions. So, I'm going to hold on to these two questions until the end, just because particularly one of them is going to be easier for me to show you. And the other, I'll cover what to do with orientation at the end. So if you have questions about that, no, I'm not ignoring them. I'm just going to try to group them all together. So in terms of tools and software, First, I think you all now are familiar with your single sign-on, but just in case, I want to take a moment here to pause, because remember this at cuny.edu is how you will log in not just to your courses, in our case in Brightspace, but also CUNY First, DegreeWorks, which we discussed a bit earlier, and several other resources. So please make sure that you keep your username handy. EAB also will use the same username in order for you to sign on. So it's just one that you're going to need everywhere online for accessing these tools. So when we're thinking about CUNY First in particular, some of the things that you've already done with it most likely are register for your courses. You may have also looked at financial aid resources and paid tuition. Other things, though, that I want to make sure to highlight, make sure you know you can view your unofficial transcripts, recognizing that there will likely be differences between your official and unofficial transcripts, sometimes in terms of what's included. So you may see more in an unofficial transcript than you would the official one. When in doubt, please do reach out to ask. This is where you'll be able to check your grades at the end of the term. And this is also where you can update your address and contact information. That includes updating your preferred name. So if you are trans, genderqueer, otherwise have a dead name that you don't want people to see in Brightspace, Brightspace tends to use your preferred name. So this is the place where you would want to go to make sure that you change that. This is also where you would go to work through the e-permit process, which is if you want to take a course at another CUNY campus. That same single sign-on will get you access to Office 365. So that, of course, includes Outlook, but it includes other key programming, or programs, I should say, such as Word, Excel, PowerPoint, as well as the cloud storage. So I would highly suggest using this if you do not already have access to the Office platform. If you are on a Mac, for example, remember that when you are uploading files to Brightspace to turn into your professors, you want to make sure that you are using a Word file or an Excel file or a PDF. You don't want to use pages, notes, things like that. So if that might be a problem for you, remember you have free access to Office 365. If you want to access your email, you will be going to the location on the screen now. So you've got two options, portal.office.com or login.microsoftonline.com, and you will add in your sign-in there. Notice that the username here is the same as your single sign-on. So this is always first name dot last name and the last two digits of your EMPL. And then what's after that is different. This is your CUNY SPS email address, whereas the single sign-on is at login.cuny.edu. Other things you have free access to, Zoom. So we highly suggest using this because many of your professors for their office hours will be using Zoom. And you are also just free to use this yourself because while you are a student here, you just have full access, which is lovely. And similarly, Dropbox, in case you need additional file storage, you can access the CUNY Dropbox login at www.dropbox.cuny.edu and use that same at login.cuny.edu account and password to access both of these. And so just more information about that is here. You can see a little bit more information. So like I was saying, John Wick, this information will be sent to you by the help desk, and you'll be able to use this to apply for scholarships, as well as to access the databases. If you do not yet have access to the information about your email address in advance of the first day of the term, I would highly suggest reaching out to the help desk for assistance. Because if you are coming straight from another CUNY campus, sometimes this information will get sent to your previous CUNY email, and we know you don't always have access to it. So please check to see if you've gotten access to that yet. I'm assuming you've already registered for classes, but if you don't, let's say by Thursday, I would definitely send the help desk an email. Also, while we will hopefully eventually once again be able to open the computer lab located at SPS's campus, for now, computer labs are available on site at the Newman Library. So you can access that information there. And again, if you just need more information about the laptop loan program, because that's why you would be going to the computer lab, make sure that you give that a look as well. There's a question that I'm going to need some clarification about. So the question is, when should you use Office 365 with your email login versus your CUNY First login? Will you receive communication for both? So you'll use your email login to log in strictly to your email like inbox, like you would for Gmail or any other platform. Generally speaking, though, you will use the CUNY First at login.cuny.edu to access programs. So if you wanted to access Microsoft Word, essentially what will happen is periodically you'll get a little pop-up asking you to log in. And that's the one you'll use for that. You'll be able to tell because it'll look very much like what it would when you are attempting to log in. I will actually log out of Brightspace very quickly. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can see me navigating a window rather than the beautiful? So once you're seeing this here, where it's got that at login.cuny.edu, that is your sign that you want to use your CUNY login, that one for here. So you can see for me, it's my first name dot last name, the last two of my UMPL, and then at login.cuny.edu. Now this may act a little bit funny because I'm not logging in the way I'm supposed to, but it was very kind to me anyway. And while I'm here, what I'll show you, this is just the CUNY webpage. So generally speaking, once you have done that, and I will go to DegreeWorks because it won't show anything, it shouldn't. You can see I did not need to log in. So it took me straight to DegreeWorks because I was already here. Likewise, if I now choose CUNY First, I'm going to see something different from what you would, but you can see I am now right in CUNY First. So once you've logged in, it should generally keep you logged in to these websites. It just may periodically ask you for another login or to log in again, say for Zoom, or for some of the other programs. It's usually around every 2 weeks, it may ask you to log in again. So hopefully that answers your question, but if not, please do send me a follow-up. And I see someone has their hand raised. So if you have your hand raised because you have a question, please do put it in the QA. That way I can just make sure I navigate it properly. So let's talk some more about scholarships, because we've talked about scholarships for when you are in need or funding for when you are in need. But just briefly, I want to highlight that the CUNY SPS Foundation does have multiple named funds, multiple scholarships to benefit students. They are open once a year, and they tend to open midway through the spring term. So this is actually a great time to look at them at this URL on the screen here, so that you can see if there are any you might be eligible for, and if so, what you might need to do. because these are internal scholarships that we are always very happy to be able to provide to our students, and we hope that students who are interested do indeed apply. There are, of course, external scholarships as well. I can't provide as much information about them, neither can our scholarships team. So just generally, I want to make sure you know to do your due diligence, really research these carefully. Make sure that you are not paying to apply for a scholarship unless you know that it is truly reputable, because we don't want you to accidentally get scammed out of those application dollars. And as always, just make sure you fully understand the requirements and, if possible, the selection criteria before you apply. Make sure that you answer every question. I am always a fan of composing any essays or longer responses in Word or Google Docs. We will talk more about tutoring opportunities in a moment, but while most people go to the Writing Fellows or tutor.com for help with writing having to do with their courses, really, you can speak with them about help with structuring writing generally, and that could be useful here too. There is, of course, the FAFSA, which I remember very clearly always caused me a lot of agita, a lot of stress every year. So the key thing I want to highlight to you is that we share a federal code with the Graduate Center. So when you are completing your FAFSA, this is the code you want to use. Likewise, if you are applying for state aid, and I should actually say what I'm saying, this is the code you want to use. The code is 004765. If you are a New York State resident, you can apply for state aid, and our school code there is 1420. And of course, there's also the Pell Grant, as well as student loans that you can obtain federally. One question that does pop up periodically is if we have work study, a federal work study program, and we currently do not, unfortunately. So I wanted to make sure you all know that. Lastly, there's information about tuition assistance program, TAP, as well as aid for part-time study. Excelsior, as well as the aid for part-time study, requires separate applications. And Excelsior in particular is something that doesn't quite fit most of our students, since it requires that you be going straight through your education with no breaks. But if that sounds like it might be you, it is worth looking into. And of course, there are private loans. So for now, I will just mention those to you, but you can look at the information when you have this full slide deck. So I want to move on to talking about some offices. I am going to have to really breeze through these just for the sake of time. But again, you'll have all of this so you can read this more carefully moving forward. Career services is a big one. You may have met Shannon and Kelsey in orientation. I know sometimes students really think about this as something to start worrying about as you get closer to graduation, but I highly suggest connecting with them early because they can work with you thinking about how much time you have towards your degree to make sure that you graduate with as much under your belt as possible to make that degree of yours and what else you've learned stretch as far as possible in terms of making you an attractive candidate for the jobs you're interested in. They use CareerLink. And so this is how they schedule sessions with them, but they also offer LinkedIn and social media training. They post internships and jobs, and they can do mock interviews with you, among other things. So very useful. You will continue to have access to their services once you graduate. We do want to highlight that they offer these types of services. So work with the resume, interviewing, your job search more generally, as well as career development panel discussions. And these can include recruiters as well as alumni. Oops, excuse me. So I'm going to move on to tutoring here. as promised, because we have three main types: the writing fellows, the quantitative reasoning fellow, and tutor.com. So think of the writing fellows as our in-house writing center. These are all CUNY graduate students who are experts at writing both in their fields but across fields. They can provide assistance with any stage of writing, from outlining and brainstorming to drafting. They can also help you with ATA citations and formatting. And I realized we made a mistake here with the fall, so this is for the spring. These are still our types of appointment, both online and asynchronous. There are no in-person sessions right now with the fellows. They are open for particular hours during the day, but if you find yourself with availability when they are available, I highly recommend them because they will be more familiar with your courses. The quantitative reasoning fellows are similar, but they're for when we're talking about math and related programming. So if you're using Excel, Tableau, you need help visualizing data, or you just need some help with some math skills, they also offer the same types of appointments, and they are CUNY SPS students and graduates. But let's say that you don't have availability at the same time as those fellows do. That's where tutor.com comes in. Tutor.com is online 24/7 with over 100 subjects, including nursing, chemistry, math, statistics, writing, others. They also offer in a couple of their topics, language, or excuse me, tutoring in Spanish. So if you find that you are originally a Spanish speaker and still have an easier time learning new concepts there, that might be helpful. Every student receives 10 hours to use on tutor.com per semester for free. If you use those hours, you can reach out to us, and if possible, we will give you more, but it's 10 to start. Next up is disability and veteran services. So this is in case you are someone who has either a permanent or a temporary disability. So that can include things like mental health, physical health, in some cases, pregnancy. There are a lot of things that can be covered by this. Likewise, if you are a veteran, they also offer special services to our veterans. So for more information, you would reach out to one of the two email addresses on the screen, either disabilitysservices@sps.cuny.edu or veterans@sps.cuny.edu for more information about how these offices can help you. I will be posting information as an announcement about disability services shortly. We're waiting for an external platform to go back online. But as soon as I'm able to do that, if you are someone who thinks you may have a disability that could benefit from a formal accommodation, such as receiving more time on an exam, you will want to start that process as soon as possible because it is not instantaneous. And once you have your accommodation, if you receive an accommodation, it is not retroactive. So an important note, if you work with the Office of Student Disability Services, you ultimately receive a formal accommodation, you have to release your letter to your faculty members. And that accommodation takes effect once you have released the letter. So please, 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 if you have a formal accommodation, please do not wait until you actively need it. Send it to your professor sooner so that you can actually start benefiting from that earlier rather than later. We also have the Student Life Office, and that is led by Anthony Swee, as well as Reshma, Parsh, and Elizabeth. This is the team that really helps with co-curricular and extracurricular activities, including clubs and events. Some of these are on campus, some are virtual. And this also includes opportunities to participate in our leadership. So you can see a couple of those on the screen. But in addition, You can look at events that can help you with building community, and also receiving admission to guest speakers, workshops, and more. Events are always updated on the website, but we also send information via email, and that is always going to be your CUNY SPS email, which is why you definitely want to make sure you check it. Next, I want to take some time to talk about counseling services. These are very important and they are very close to my heart because I recognize that they often are stigmatized, and I want to do my best to help prevent some of that. So we have a small but mighty team here to provide assistance with counseling. And just generally speaking, first thing to know is that they are free. So if you do not have health insurance, that does not prevent you from accessing these services. You can have remote and in-person services, and they are confidential. Now, note, things you send to them in email are not confidential, but when you are meeting with them, either remotely or in person, what you discuss with them is. They tailor their services to your needs, and if you are enrolled in the current semester, you are eligible. So I know a lot of people think about counseling or therapy as something that you should go to if you are in active crisis or you have a diagnosed mental health condition or think you might. I really want to highlight that this can be useful to you when you are not grappling with those things. If you are stressed, if you are finding that you are having or returning to thoughts or situations that are preventing you from being the best self you know you can be, if you are having reactions to things that are happening in your personal life, in public life, nationally, globally, all of these are reasons to seek out counseling. So I want to highlight that. But I also want to highlight that if you are in crisis, this means that you are in an urgent situation and you require a prompt response. This does not mean that you are a risk to yourself or someone else's safety. But if you are in crisis and need immediate attention, we want to make sure that we highlight these resources here, because we do not want you to need to wait for one of our counselors to be available for you if things are becoming more urgent for you. I hope you will feel comfortable and encouraged to reach out to one of these resources as well. So please feel encouraged to contact them. And by them, I mean our in-house counseling if you have more questions. There will be a couple more slides on this when we provide you with the PDF, because there's a lot of information to digest. But I just wanted to make sure to really stress that, because there is a stigma, particularly among some populations, about seeking help. And if you think any of this sounds like it could potentially be useful to you, I would really encourage you to reach out to them before you think that you are in an urgent situation. Help desk, we've covered a little bit. So I just want to highlight, this is for technical issues, like if you can't access the email account, if you're having a hard time with logging into Brightspace. And you can reach them Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. You can email them at helpdesk@sps.cuny.edu or call them. Outside of the above hours, there is a second number that you can contact for general assistance, and that's at 844-536-0050 number. If you have questions about using Brightspace that are not course specific, but you just realize you don't know how to submit a quiz, we also have a separate number where you can get help directly from Brightspace. That's 888-895-2511. On the first day of the semester, since it is a Saturday, there will be help desk assistance. So I would highly suggest that you either email or call them But please know you will likely be sent to voicemail when you call, and they will be calling you back. I fully expect them to be a bit overwhelmed on the first day of the term. So that's why you can also reach out to me and the orientation team as well. If we are able to help you, we will be glad to do so. All right, I have a couple of minutes left and a couple of questions left. So let me address those. So the first question is, what happens if you miss the deadline in orientation? Well, reach out to us first if you think you might miss the deadline. And this is actually a good question for your courses as well. I am not currently in the classroom as a professor. However, when I was, what I really wanted all of my students to do if they realize that they may have trouble meeting a deadline is to reach out to me at least 24 hours in advance. Because if you reach out and I have the ability to give you an extension, I will give you an extension. So to model that here, if you are looking at what you have left to do in orientation and you are realizing you are not going to meet that deadline, please reach out to us at orientation.sps.cuny.edu. Let us know. Please remember to include your EMPL, and that's just general best practices for reaching out to an office, because that is how we will know if you have, like, we'll be able to reach out to you after looking at your record. So that's my answer for that one. We will be sending out information about how to know if you've completed everything in orientation, but in particular, a couple of places to go. Now, I am not going to see exactly what you will because I am not a true student. However, excuse me. Oh, it's not letting me use what I would like to right now. All right, I'm going to show you where to go. Essentially, you're going to want to go to grades. Now, this is probably going to look different for me. I think actually it will send me to my grades. Let me cancel that. You're going to want to go to grades. And what you will see in orientation, so that it's not the first time that you've seen it, is if you're like me and you haven't yet done anything, you're going to log here and you're going to see a bunch of zeros and Fs. This is one way that sometimes things will show up in the Grade Center. I don't anticipate most of your classes will do this, but if you log in on the first day of term and you see a bunch of zeros and Fs, the Fs are just because you haven't yet earned credit for something yet. So it is not a final grade. Please do not worry about it like it's a final grade. What you'll want to be able to see is that you have submitted work for all of these. Other places you can go are activities, look for assignments, and you'll be able to see if you've submitted anything, if it's been graded or evaluated. You can do the same thing looking at quizzes, where you can see both of those here. However, we will again be sending you information about what you have left to do later this week. So that should hopefully help you. Events team, do I have time to try to speed run through the questions that just came in?
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you so much. All right, so PDFs are being sent to you if you have registered for the webinar, but we will also make sure that they are all posted in the orientation site by the end of orientation. Again, if you haven't completed much in orientation yet, that's okay. It is not over yet. You have more time. And just like the other person who asked this question, if you realize you need more time than is available, that is why you should reach out to us for an extension, because I may be in a position to provide one. So please do reach out to us with that. Notifications. Will you receive Brightspace notifications for completed tasks, quizzes, and assignments if the notifications are on? Some of this really depends on the courses. So I always say expect the notifications, but check the course site just to make absolutely certain. And then I'm going to pause to answer this last question. Give me 1 second, please. Because the last question is about Grow with Google. So I'm going to show you the Grow with Google page before we end. So essentially, we share screen again. This is Grow with Google, and you can see the certificates. These career certificates are the ones that we can give you access to. So I had mentioned project management, but you can see there are quite a few. And so this is something, I'll just go to the overview so you can see it. But this is what we are able to provide you access to. So you can learn more about them. And if you see one or more that look interesting to you, that is what you will reach out to the PLA team for help with. I think this is a fantastic opportunity personally, so I would highly suggest looking into it. That said, there are a limited number of licenses, so definitely take the time to look at this now if you think this is something you would be interested in. And with that, I think I hit the last of the questions. So thank you so much, everyone, especially for spending a couple of extra minutes with me. I hope that these tools were useful to you. We will continue to share additional tools in the orientation site, and throughout the term, you will start to see information from us transition after orientation is over from being sent to you at orientation@sps.cuny.edu to being sent to you by first year at sps.cuny.edu. It is the same team, so you will still be hearing from Emily and myself there. But I am very grateful to you all for your time, and I'm really very much looking forward to seeing you, not just in orientation, but throughout your first term and beyond. So please have a wonderful end of your day and a fantastic week as we head toward the semester this weekend. Take care, everybody.